Hey, Emily here. Before we start this episode, we just wanted to let you know that today's conversation includes discussions about domestic violence and child abuse. Some of the details shared today may be distressing or difficult to hear, so please take care of yourself while listening and check our show notes for helpful support resources. Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone.
Welcome to the All Pass podcast, where we support and celebrate all the different ways there are to grow your family. We're your hosts, Emily and Lauren, from the nonprofit organization All Pass Family Building. And today we're talking with Rob about his journey and work in this space. Rob, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you both. First I want to say thank you for giving us this platform. I think people need to realize is that I've actually been able to see change happen, and it all started with a conversation. All started with conversation. So to me, I love this. So
Amazing.
let's get started.
Great. So before we jump into your story, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. My name is Rob Scheer. I am the founder of an international nonprofit called Comfort Cases, but I actually have the greatest title in the world, a title that I've worked basically my whole life for, and that title is Dad. And these crazy five behind me on the wall, they are the reason I wake up every day and have this big smile on my face because I get to say those are
Oh,
mine. They're
wow.
crazy too.
That's wonderful. So, we're really excited to talk with you today. You have such a unique perspective on family building as someone with lived experience as a child in the foster care system, and now, as you said, the father of five who you have adopted through the same system. Can you talk about your childhood and how that influenced your family building choices?
You know, um, it was crazy for me as a young boy because my whole thing was survival. And
Right.
I didn't realize that. I'm getting ready to turn 60 this year, and I think about that now more than ever. I was on that survival mode, which so many young people are like that. I'm the youngest of 10 kids. My mother, she had been married 6 times. We lived in and out of every shelter. I didn't know stability, family. It was not uncommon for parents to put cigarettes out on them or touch them inappropriately. That was my family. That was my life. And as you want to sit and judge, as so many people do, I want everybody to understand something. That was my mom and dad. Okay. No matter how bad it was. And again, 59, I get to be reminded of the cigarette scars on me from my father. But to me, that was family. So as I was growing up and then putting in the system again, feeling less than and calling them mom and dad, but not having that connection of truly what is a mom and dad, because a mom and dad, they love their kids unconditionally. A mom and dad celebrates every moment, good or bad. That is what young people need. I didn't have that. So when our family started to grow, I was pissed at my husband because he got it. He did it. Why? Because he had the most amazing role model in the world, my mother and father-in-law, who did everything I wanted to have as parents, and he had that, and I didn't. So I had to learn it.
Yeah, that's painful. I think that's something we, maybe aren't prepared for when, we do finally become parents, no matter what that path is what our own childhoods bring to our parenting and how our partners' childhoods can be very different than our own and what that jealousy can look like or what what
Yeah.
what bubbles up between you and yourself that, your parenting can put a big reflecting pool in front of you and make you
Very
think all of
much.
these things.
Mhm.
Very much. And also understanding, people like me, I was very scared to repeat the cycle that I had grown up with.
Yes,
It
of
wasn't
course.
like I just had a mom and dad that were abusive. I had foster parents that were abusive. Now, go a step further. I think I'm grown and get in a relationship. And what do? I gravitate directly to abuse. 13
Of
years
course.
of that because that's what people like us feel that we deserve. So it was my husband
Right.
who, we've been together 21 years, that he was the one who said, you are worth more than a hit and a punch. So it was all of that that helped me get to that point to be a dad. And by the way, we didn't decide to be parents like that. It was we had been together for years. It was a lot of thought about this, and for me, it was a lot of therapy. So yeah, no, I'm a dad now.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. And I think every parent should have to go through a lot of therapy to get there because
Right.
it helps you work through your stuff so that you're ready to be
Uh-huh.
the best parent you can be for your kids.
And you better believe it. And Emily, by the way, they need to keep the therapy going. So
Mhm.
Oh, 100%.
keep it going.
Yes, if we can plug mental health services because people often think, oh, I just need to go to therapy for X amount of time and then I'm fixed, then I'm healed. But therapy should be, a continuous relationship with yourself.
Yes, and we need to embrace therapy.
Right.
We need our young people to know that this is okay. And by the way, we need the older generation to know that it doesn't make you weak because you want to
Hmm.
talk about your feelings. Okay? It's okay to do that. And back to the thing about being a parent, that was one of the things too, having these four young kids who arrived in our home in the very beginning, and we had four under the age of four. They all arrived within 3 months. They had trash bags. They were all in diapers. Um, yeah, it was like you just learn how to deal with so much, being a dad, especially when you jump into it as much as we did.
Yeah, it sounds like you definitely jumped in feet first. So
Yeah.
can you back it up a step? How did
Yeah,
you
yeah.
to get to that point where you said, okay, we're ready to become parents?
So I'm going to tell you the funniest thing. When I met Reese, my very first question I asked him on our very first date, sitting in a Chinese restaurant, I looked over and I said, "Do you want to be a dad?" And he said, "What?" So that is the craziest question anybody's ever asked me on a first date. I said, "Listen, if there's going to be a second date, it's all going to depend on what this answer is going to be."
This is it.
So Reese said to me, he was like, I'm in the process of getting my master's. And he said, and once I get my master's, he said, I've always thought I'd love to be a dad. And that's what he said. And that was the spark. And so
Um,
years went by. We weren't the typical gay couple. We didn't move the U-Haul up second date. We dated for 2 years, separate homes. And so then after that, we moved in together. And then 2 years of that. And then we just realized he was finishing up with school. He came home the day after graduating from his master's and laying on the table were all this information about adoption. And I said, "Hey, you told me after school you finished, we were going to talk about having a kid."
Here we are.
Now, mind you, I wanted to adopt overseas.
Okay.
I had gotten all this information about adopting overseas. That's how I wanted to build our family. I wanted our family to have that cute little baby from overseas that maybe people would question whether it looked like us or not. The expensive stroller in DC, everybody looking at us. And then when Reese said to me, "Now you have to explain to me though why we're not adopting out of foster care," I was like, "What the hell?" I was like,
Called out. Called
I was
out.
like,
Yeah.
first of
Okay.
all, I know about those kids. And he looked at me and was like, "You were one of those kids."
Exactly.
First of all, I realized at that point he is very educated, okay? Because he's right. I was one of those kids, and I was so worried about what people would think about me because I didn't tell people. I was
Right.
scared to tell people, as I said in those boardrooms, that I didn't know the difference between there, and there, and that I was uneducated. And I used to sleep on the streets and I used to eat out of trash cans, all because my community gave up on me because I was a kid who aged out of a system they created. And so with that was when we filled out our paperwork, we did all the classes, and then we waited. And, shocking as it can be, even 17 years ago, there was discrimination. Our
Mhm.
application was put on the bottom of the stack because we were two white men, and it was unheard of in the DC for two
Mm.
white men to be foster parents. Um, and especially because there was no way we weren't going to get anything but black kids. And so they tried to, push us away. But I didn't let that happen. I called every day. I bugged them. I called that switchboard every day. And finally, after about, I want to say it was about 4 months, they finally hired a new admin person, and she actually liked gay people. So the next thing you know, 2 days
Wow.
later, the phone rang and they said, "Hey, Mr. Scheer, hey, guess what? Well, we got two kids." I said, "Whoa, I only want one." They said, but we have two. We have a little girl and a little boy. They're brother and sister, and they're 4 and 2. They've been in foster care for 3 months, and they really needed a place to sleep that night. And by the way, their goal was reunification with their birth mother.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to Reese, I don't know if I can do this. And he said,
Mm.
listen, he said, if we can change a child's life for just one night, he said, I know we did something, and that's what you want to do. And he was right. Again, I told you he's really damn smart. And so when I saw my daughter and saw our son, I saw two very broken little kids. They had a trash bag. There was no smiles. There was no sparks in their eyes. Um, and I just remember saying to Reese, I'm the happiest I've ever been because I was actually a dad. And by the way, I was a dad to the most beautiful little girl. I say this quite often. Any man or anybody who ever has an opportunity to be a parent to a little girl, there is no other feeling. I've raised my daughter as a princess because one day she's going to be a queen. But she was so sad. And I remember she walked into her new little bedroom, and Reese had, my husband's an interior designer. So you could just imagine what my
Wow.
daughter's new little bedroom
Because it
looked
must
like.
have been fit for a little princess.
Oh my gosh, on that first night when she walked into that room and it was
Oh,
everything you could imagine. And lying on the bed, Reese had put three brand new nightgowns. And she
oh my
walked over and
goodness.
she picked up the nightgown and she tore the tag off of it and she turned around and she smiled at me for the very first time.
I'm crying already.
I mean, I remember it if it was yesterday. And I looked at her and I said, Amaya, why are you smiling? And she looked at me and she said, Mr. Rob, I've never owned a new pair of pajamas.
Uh,
Wow. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable that kids come into a system because of a choice someone else made, and we can't even choose to give them a brand new pair of pajamas. But for us, it was about being dads. Month one, month two, month three goes by. We were doing it.
yeah.
We were doing it. People thought we were crazy. We were crazy. And understanding my son Makai, who was 2, we were told he was never going to talk and probably would never walk.
Oh,
And we were actually told by the social worker, were we sure we wanted this one as if he was a piece of clothing.
oh
They
my
said he was
God.
autistic, that he had failure to thrive, tibia trauma, you name it, this kid had it. But there was something that Reese and I saw in this young boy. And so 3 months later, the phone rang. They said, hey, Mr. Scheer, hey, guess what? What? We got two more kids. I said, whoa, I got two kids.
I'm busy right now. This is a
Woo,
lot.
I'm real busy. And they said, but we have two little boys. We have a little boy who is 2 and his brother who is 6 months.
Oh, wow.
They have been put in the system for the second time. They're being
Okay.
fast tracked for adoption. Their mother was 12 when she gave birth to the first one, 13 when
Oh,
she gave birth to the second. They have come in the system with bleeding of the brain, shaken baby syndrome, and 3 broken
oh,
ribs. I said, I'll see you at 7 o'clock. I went home and Reese was in the kitchen with Amaya and Makai. And I said, Reese, I've got these two little boys. He said, Rob, we got two kids. I said, Reese, these two boys need me and I need them. And I told Reese about their story. And he was like, Rob, we've really got to talk about this. I said, that's fine. We have until 7. And sure enough, at 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang, and there were my boys, both with trash bags. My son Grayson, who was 2, and his brother Tristan, who was 6 months. And we just became two guys with 4 kids, and we just made it work. And, as the year went by, we realized that birth families weren't doing anything. And I'm going to remind everybody, it doesn't matter how you build your family. It is not acceptable for children to sit on the sidelines and wait for adults to be adults. We all fall, and I know that. I have fallen many times, but the difference is I get up. And the thing is children need us to get up. And so for me, I gave those parents every opportunity to give up. But I then made a decision after a year and a half that I could no longer look at these young people and decide that their lives were just on hold because we couldn't do the basics. And so I remember when I said to Reese, we're going to file for adoption and adopt these 4 kids. He said, we're losing these kids if we do that. The social worker says they're not ready. I said, I don't give a damn what the social worker says. I said, the government says they've lived in our home for more than 6 months. I legally can file for adoption. I'm also not asking the state to give me any money. I will hire our own attorney. But I cannot look at our children another day and think to myself that I'm not fighting for them. See, that's what children deserve. They
yeah.
deserve to have that one adult look at them and say, you matter. And so for that, we hired an attorney and we went in for the fight. We hired a bonding study expert because people said that Black kids could not
Mm.
bond with white people. We hired an expert who came in and said 2 gay men will not turn 3 boys gay. We hired an expert who came in and said, my 4 Black children will stay Black even if they have white parents. And the judge decided after 40 days, and by the way, birth families didn't show, but
Mm.
after 4 days of a trial, that judge said, these kids, they're Shears. And so I
Oh.
did exactly what you all think I did. I got them passports, designer clothes, private schools. I did all those things. What a mistake. See,
Oh.
the thing is that I had thought for so long it was the material things that made life go. That because you didn't give me the things I needed as a young boy, I felt like I had to give my kids those things. But
Right.
14 years ago, I was sitting in my office right outside of DC. I'm a banker by trade. My husband had given up his career to have the hardest job in the world, which is to stay at home and raise our amazing children. And as he walked into my office to plan that toy drive that all the people who have money do, they do the toy drives with their kids. They make themselves feel good. They pat themselves on the back. And by the way, the day after Christmas, half of the toys are broken. And most of those people don't even think about those kids. And I said to Reese, we failed our kids. He said, what are you talking about? I said, we have forgotten to teach our kids two of the most important things. He said, what's that? I said, their legacy. See, my friends, your legacy is about what you give and not what you take. But I
Mhm.
looked at him and said, Reese, empathy. See, empathy is not in our DNA, it's taught. And I have failed to teach that to our children. And he said, what do you want to do? And I opened up my desk drawer and I pulled out a trash bag. See, the fact is, as I do not allow it to go far away from me because I do not want to forget where I came from, and I do not want my children to ever be embarrassed of where they came from. I said to him, I said, I'm going to eliminate these in foster care in DC. He said, you're BS crazy. I said, I know, that's why you married me. I said, do this. So we gathered members of our church, local politicians, my senior staff, and I shared the story that I shared with all of you today. The story about a 12-year-old little boy who was handed a bag to define who he was. And then when he was 18, instead of them clapping for him and cheering for him and making him feel that he was wanted, they put him on the streets. But he again made the decision to make the system not define him, he defined who he was. But then as my children arrived, I realized that what they needed was they needed somebody to stand next to them and realize that if they push the mountain with them, the mountain will move. And so with that, I grabbed that backpack and I put a brand new pair of pajamas with a tag in it. I made sure that every kid got their own lotion, their own shampoo, their own conditioner, and their own bar of soap. See, kids walk into a house of strangers. We all expect them to assimilate like that. But for some reason, we feel better then. We walk into hotels. We get a brand new bar of soap every single time. Why? It's dignity. You walk into a hotel of strangers. Why don't you use that bar of soap? We make kids 700 a day. Do it. Not on my watch. I want every kid to get a brand new toothbrush and toothpaste. And by the way, my beautiful teeth, and if you show the video, my teeth are beautiful. They cost me an arm and a leg because
Right.
nobody bothered to give me a toothbrush when I was in the system. I make sure kids get an activity. I make sure that girls are given feminine products, deodorant. Then I make sure every kid gets a stuffy because I don't care whether you're a newborn or you're 59. We all love a good stuffed animal. And then finally, my son Grayson, he was actually 5 when we packed our very first case. He's 19, getting ready to go to college next Saturday. He said to
Wow.
me, he said, Daddy, we have to put a blankie in every case. And I was like,
Ah.
Grayson, I was like, you know, these kids are not cold. He was like, I know, Daddy. He's like, but every time they wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them.
Oh,
Oh, that's
My
amazing.
friends, isn't that what we
that's
want?
empathy. You talking
Yes,
that.
we
You
want to be
talking that.
Well
loved. We
done.
want to know we matter. And so, with that,
Yeah.
we packed a case and another and another. And because of amazing humans, we have packed and delivered as a 96% volunteer ran organization. We have
Wow.
packed and delivered over 320,000 backpacks.
Oh my gosh.
We have delivered them to all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico. And I know I do not need to remind your smart listeners, Puerto Rico belongs to us. Yes, it's surrounded
Yeah.
by water, but so is Hawaii. See, the thing
Uh-huh.
is, our forefathers, they actually built communities for one reason, and it wasn't for our bushes to match. It was for us to take care of each other. And the thing I've learned in this journey, my friends, is that I was angry. I was pissed off at my community. They failed me. But then I realized as my children have grown and as we've grown this organization and I have been able to have these conversations, I'm not angry. See, I've learned my community, they just weren't educated about me. They weren't. But now they have no excuse because I will make sure that everyone understands that kids in foster care, they are our future.
I love that. So many questions too. Like, I don't even know where to start. Okay, so no, so you shared how your oldest four came into your family.
Right. Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
kiddo number five?
The years had gone by, the kids were growing, and life was great. I decided to give up my career as banking to be a public speaker. Derek Jeter actually published my memoir and convinced me that this was a great thing to do, and I'm so glad that he did. And so, as I had gone
Wow.
out across the country on a book tour, I came back to Maryland, where I live, and my assistant said that she wanted me to go talk at a local high school. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was exhausted. Um, and I remember even saying to
Mhm.
her, I was like, how did you do this to me? I just flew back from LA. I'm exhausted. She said, you promised me you would never say no to a school. And she was right. She's smart too, by the way. She's been with me for 17 years. And so I walked into this high school and I told my story. And a young boy walked up to me and he said, Mr. Scheer, will you sign my book? I said, of course. What's your name? And he said, Alex. I said, Alex, tell me something about yourself. He says, I have nothing to tell. I said, Alex, we all have a story. He said, no, my story's like yours. I've been in foster care since I was 5. I've been in 11 homes, 6 schools. I'm 18 years old. I'm getting ready to age out. I'm going to be homeless like you. That hit me so.
That's a gut
I
punch.
said, Alex, it doesn't have to go that way. He said, no, Mr. Shear, I've fallen through the cracks of child welfare. I looked over at the principal and she had a tear going down her eye. She said, Mr. Shear, Alex has a 3.6 and we don't know what to do. I handed Alex my business card and the principal, and I said, Alex, I have to go give another talk, but I want you to call me. I was like, we're going to figure this out. I remember leaving and I went home that night and I told the kids and Reese about meeting this young boy and about how this really was weighing heavy on me. And one of my kids was like, Dad, if he calls, invite him to our house for dinner. And I was like, what a good idea. And so the very next day he called me and he was like, hey, Mr. Shear, this is Alex. Do you remember me? I was like, dude, I'm not that old. I was like, give me the phone number to your foster parents. I was like, I want you to come over Saturday and have dinner with us. I want you to meet the kids and Reese. He was like, oh, the family you write about in your book? I said, no, I have a fake family. Teenagers. And so, sure enough, I picked him up on that Saturday. I brought him back to our house for dinner. Reese was like, you know what? Let's go out to dinner tonight. And I was like, what a good idea. And we went down to the local Mexican restaurant. We eat at least a couple times a month. And we sit down, and my son Tristan, he was 10 at the time, and he looks at Alex and he says, Alex, he's like, you can order anything off the menus, and my dads don't care. And he was like, I can order anything? He's like, I'm getting the shrimp fajitas, and if I don't eat them all, I never get in trouble. And my daughter looked at Alex and said, Alex, haven't you been to Guapo's? Alex looked at my kids and said, I don't remember the last time somebody took me to a restaurant. My friends,
Mhm.
at that moment as a dad, I did my job. I saw the empathy flow
Mhm.
out of my kids' eyes. We ate, went to Dave and Buster, dropped Alex off at his foster parents' house. I get in the car and it's quiet. And all of a sudden the kid said,
Mhm.
Daddy, we have to do something for Alex. I said, I know, guys, I don't know what to do. And they said, we have to bring him home. I said, what? They said, we have to bring him home. I looked at Reese. He said, what's one more? My husband and I were the very first couple in the state of Maryland to petition the courts to have a child from foster care come and live with us without a stipend. The judge looked at me and said, Mr.
Oh.
Shear, why would you do this? I looked at the judge and I said, as I say to each and every one of you, every child deserves a foundation. Every child deserves to know there's someone they're rooting them on. But every child deserves to feel, what does it feel like when someone truly loves me unconditionally? I looked at my son and he was crying in the courtroom. He said, Pops, you have changed my life. I said, nobody. You changed our lives. I said, I only have one regret. The judge said, Mr. Shear, what is your regret? I said, I didn't get to walk him to kindergarten, but now I'll get to walk with him for the rest of his life. A year after that, we were in the height of COVID. My son walked up to Reese and I and said, Pops, will you adopt me? And I was like, why? I was like, you're not going anywhere. He's like, I know. He's like, but I want the same last name as Dada and my sister and brothers. I called my adoption attorney and we legally adopted Alex. Our kids are now 25, 22, 19, 19, and 17.
Oh my
Amazing.
gosh.
I love how the whole family decided
Incredible.
on to bring the fifth one into the fold.
Yes.
Yep, the whole
Yeah.
family.
And like you didn't have to convince your husband this time.
No, no.
He's like,
This
yeah,
was,
I know the drill by
and by
now.
the way, all five of our kids still live at home. We've got college kids, high school, working kids. They're not kids per se. I still call them my babies, but all
Right.
five of them. And
Right.
in today's world, it's hard to live outside of the house. And I love the fact that our
Sure.
kids feel so comfortable, even at 25. And by the way, my son has a lot to.
Mm.
He missed a lot. He missed a lot
Mm.
from birth to 18. And so we're making up for all of that time. And it's been amazing. Has it been a lot of downs? Yes. It's been a lot of ups? Yes. But that's family. Understand that. That's family. And the common thing that I said throughout this, and I hope everybody takes away, is unconditional love.
Mhm.
We deal with things, schizophrenia, reactive attachment disorder, depression. We deal with that as families. But what we don't do
Mhm.
is shut the door on our children. We love them unconditionally, no matter what they bring to the table. And by the way, if they bring something to the table and you don't think it fits, build a bigger table. Simple as that. Build a bigger table.
The other message that I love, what I'm hearing from you, Rob, is that it's never too late to give a child what they deserve.
Never too
And it's,
late to give a young person truly what they deserve, and never too late. This whole entire podcast about family, and at the end of the day, I really do believe if we are honest with each other, we all want that. We want that
Mhm.
connection, and it doesn't matter that their blood is not my blood. And
I,
again, if Alex wasn't white, you would not know he was not related genetically to these other kids. That's how close the bond is that
yeah.
they have, along with their fathers. And by the way, my kids, they are very, very aware of their bio families. They've had conversations, sleepovers. But I will tell you, at the end of the day, though, our kids, they knew who their parents are. They know who are
Mhm.
there for them when their knees are skinned up, and they know they're there with them when they need to be reprimanded for they know they made the wrong choice. Um,
Yeah.
Right.
Parent is a verb. It's
yes.
not defined by some sort of genetic tie or familial relationship.
Mhm.
It's a verb. It's the people your
Yeah.
parents are the people who are parenting day in, day out.
And also understand though, as parents, we're not perfect. As parents, and we are not perfect, and we are different with every child, and we make different decisions on every little human. And
Mhm.
the thing I always remind people as parents, I always say, oh, I love the fact that they belong to me. Pff, I belong to them. Because again, I'll say it, I have one daughter, four boys. People ask me all the time, you think you ever had another girl? No. I only have room in my heart for one girl. And by the way, gentlemen, women rule this world. Once we figure this out, the world's gonna be so much better. But I seriously, I asked my daughter, I'll never forget it. I said to her, I said, do you want us to have, you would like a sister? She said, no. I said, what do you mean? She says, I'm not sharing you.
Smart girl.
She's a daddy's girl. She is
Sorry.
truly,
I
I
love
mean,
it.
her and
Yeah.
my husband and I are very opposite. The kids get everything in the world they need from, the nurturing and all that. And so, but yeah, but she's a daddy's girl.
I mean, and there's something
Incredible.
special to the chaos of five children. I'm the oldest of five, but we're four girls and one boy. So it's
Oh, the
yeah,
opposite.
it's a
Oh, that's
special
a crazy world.
special household. Yeah. It was a lot growing up, but
Yeah.
I
We
mean,
made
yeah.
sure Maya had her own bathroom. She always had a master suite.
Cozy.
And we also made sure that when our daughter started her menstrual cycle, that our boys realized that we wouldn't be here without a menstrual cycle. So we embrace our
Mhm.
daughter's menstrual cycle. Even though she
I
doesn't
love
like the
that.
fact that we celebrated it when she was little. Um,
Aw,
But that's important parenting
right.
work. Teach your
Raising
sons that
enlightened
this
men.
is
Yes, it is. I
yeah.
say this to my boys, and my boys will actually, now they're adults, they say this, they'll say, we are allies to the women who menstruate.
Love it.
Yes.
Perfect. Oh my gosh.
Preach. I
So, I
obsessed.
mean, you've obviously done so much right as a parent. One thing I was really hoping that you would check out, and I know you talked about it on the podcast that you did with your youngest son, the Father's Day episode, which was so
Oh,
lovely.
Tristan.
But could you talk a little bit about raising a multiracial, multicultural family, how you kept your children connected to their roots, whatever they might
Very
be?
important. Very, very important. And by the way, don't ever walk up to my family and say to them, "Oh, look at that beautiful family. I don't see any color," because I will remind you, if you do not see color, you do not see my four black kids. My four black children are
Mhm.
treated totally different than my son Alex. And I'll give you an example. We were in Macy's. I think this was probably about 2 years ago. My son Mackay, tall like me, dark skin, walked up to the cat with his hoodie on as usual. That's Mackay. Walked up to the counter with a very expensive jacket, and set it on the counter. And I happened to be standing not next to him, but kind of behind him. And the woman behind the counter looked at my son and said, "And how do you think you're going to pay for that?" Uh,
Wow.
well, that
Gross.
is what we call racism. She
Hmm.
stereotyped my son because of his skin color and the clothing that he was wearing. And by the way, I didn't just take that, I confronted it, and it was true.
Good.
So, what I'm
Uh-huh.
trying to explain to people is that one, we have to understand that that happens and we cannot ignore it and we cannot walk away when we see the wrongs that are being done to our brothers and sisters. And what I have said to our children so many times is that we cannot ever change ignorance, but what we can do is educate them. So, with things like that, we
Mhm.
put our money somewhere else. The next thing I want people to understand is that kids deserve to see people like them. So, what did my husband and I originally do? We immediately joined a church. And by the way, I don't care what you believe. I choose to believe what I want my children to believe, and they believe what they want to believe. But we joined a church at 70% people of color. When our children walk into our house, they see themselves. Why? Because the pictures that are on the wall reflect them, reflect my son Alex, and those are the first steps that we have to make. Because when we normalize things start becoming more normal. And for my household, that's the way it's going to be. Again, I can never, ever, and I'm going to say something. I just learned this just recently. If you're a parent and you're a parent to a black kid, it is a sleepless nights. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Sleepless nights. I worry about my boys more than I worry about my daughter. Um, I have taught my boys to when if the unfortunately I don't have boys who get pulled over often, but I do have one who seems to always seem to get pulled over. And I
Oh
always say to
no.
him, hands on steering wheel. And as
Uh-huh.
hard as this is, it's yes, sir. No, sir. Not because they earned it, but because I want you to come
Right.
home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's how I deal with it, Emily.
And so you mentioned the church. Were there any other groups or particular communities that were helpful and supportive during your family building journey?
Oh, what a great question. Because I see a lot of movies and stuff with all this. No, it was really hard for us in the beginning, by the way. We felt very
Yeah.
isolated being gay men
Uh-huh.
with black kids in DC. We did not feel supported. We did not feel we had support. It wasn't until we moved to the suburbs, um, about four
Hmm.
years into our journey. So I'm going to say 13 years ago, when we moved to the suburbs, did we finally find our tribe.
Okay.
It's amazing. See, our tribe is red and blue and green and purple, whatever you want to call it. Our tribe, it's like what I see my kids when I see kids hang out at our house. It's like it is truly a collected group of kids. It's a collected group of music. And so again, if your table's not big enough, you build a bigger table. And that to me has been my philosophy in life. It's how I run my organization. It's how my husband and I have opened our door in our family, is that we truly do believe that every single person should have a place at a table, no matter what they have coming to the table with, they should deserve a place at the table.
Absolutely. So now that kind of Comfort Cases has grown up alongside your family, what
Yeah.
has it evolved into, and how involved are the kids?
My kids are really involved, and I love that. And they're involved because they want to be, not because they're required to be. And I have always told that. And I'll take my daughter, for instance. My daughter, she's not as involved as the boys are, but she has this passion for horses and animal shelters. So she has a giving heart, and she does her giving bond. She doesn't have a giving heart for kids in foster care, and it's okay. I mean, but my boys, um, I can't tell you since school let out in May, a day at our national center that I've been in the center, and I travel a lot because of being a public speaker, that I haven't seen one of my boys.
Mhm.
So my
Okay.
oldest son, he's taken a hiatus for his last year of college. So he actually runs our shipping department. One of my sons, who's getting ready to head off to college for his freshman year he wants to be a nurse. He he has spent his summers and after school at the center. So yeah, they've grown up with this. And they've
Right.
grown up, being filmed because we are people that are in the public eye. But this is what I've always said to our
Sure.
children. That's is their story. And if they don't want dad to talk their story, just say it. And I always say if
Mhm.
they don't want a
Mhm.
camera in their face, they don't have to have a camera in their face, but they are not allowed to be rude. And that's the only thing. So my daughter, there's been times my daughter has not been on shows with us that people watch, and they always say, well, wait, you have five kids. She didn't feel like it that day. And you know what? That's okay. So yeah, that's how we run our ship.
And that's interesting. The more you talk with people, and my kids are young teenagers and I'm kind of coming into this now. For so long, my family building story and the journey that we went through to conceive them and to bring them here was my story, something that, I just talked about. Mine and my partners, like we owned that. Seeing them get older and figuring out what sort of relationship they have with that story does definitely bring kind of an interesting wrinkle to it. It's not just my story anymore.
Oh, no. And that happened to me. In the beginning, when
Mhm.
this all broke, when my story broke, it was my story because they were little, tiny.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're humans who can make decisions. And it's not fair for Reese and I to, put all their business on the street if that's something they choose not to have. Now, I will have to say in our family, it's worked a little differently. None of my kids object. And my kids are, when I'm like, hey, dad's got to go do this interview. They're the first ones are like, oh, hey, can we go? Or why are we not on the T?
Right.
So, but I will tell you, there was a time when they were going through that. Oh my gosh, you couldn't even be in the room with them because they were teenagers. We did go
Mm-hmm.
through some of that.
Right.
So yeah, it just happens. And again, as I've said to these kids, we have another book that we've been asked to come do a second book because of our fifth son. He's not in our first book, and the kids have gotten older, and we've gone through so much since the kids have gotten older, since I put that period at the
Yeah.
last book. So we had a family forum. We have these family forums. I write about them in my memoir. The kids get together and they're allowed to say anything they want to say. And Reese and I are never allowed to discipline them for it. And we are not allowed to bring it up. And we have raised them like that since they were little. And I think what that's done is it's got we have a good energy of conversation because we allow that time. And so when we had the family forum, the kids were all for a second book and they were all for our story continuing to be told because, and I'll never forget my one son, he always surprises the hell out of me. He said, Dad, if it can help one family, maybe adopt. But then, yeah, yeah, my kids, they just amaze me with the things that come out of their mouths. It's like, wow, these are my kids. I helped create all of this crap. Yeah, and by the way, my son
Isn't it
Mackay,
wild?
I know we're wrapping up, but I want to tell you real quick. My son Mackay, who told you about, he said they would never talk or never walk. When
Yes, I wanted to
when
ask
he
about
was
that.
5 years old, the adoption had been finalized, everything. He's right before, he was about four. And he was still in diapers. He was still, he was walking, but, the autism is, but Reese and I kept saying, this kid is not autistic. There's something else going on here. And so after the adoption, we immediately got private insurance and we immediately got him to Children's Hospital. We did all these brain scans and DNA,
Mm-hmm.
all this genetic testing. And I'll never forget the doctor set us down in the conference room and they said, your son isn't autistic. And we were like, whew. And they were like, but he has fetal alcohol syndrome. And we're like, what? And they're like, his frontal lobe's not
Mhm.
developed. And this is probably the most you're going to get out of him. And, institution might want to be considered. And I was like, what? Like, this is my son. And I said, secondly, you definitely don't know the Shears because we never say never. So I remember it was so hard. And Reese came into my office and he was like, you got to read this article. And it was an article about a girl in foster care who lived on a farm and she had fetal alcohol syndrome and about how the farm animals in the water truly helped
Mm.
her frontal lobe. And I was like, what the heck?
Wow.
And he was like, here's 5 farms for sale.
We're gonna buy a
And we
farm.
literally bought a farm. We bought a
I love
farm
it.
with chickens and ducks, goats, a pig named Penelope.
Stop.
I have a son. He will be 20 in December. He is college bound. He got almost a full scholarship. He is majoring in cybersecurity. He's minoring in public speaking. He did his first public speaking event last year to 300 people.
Oh my
Ellen
goodness.
DeGeneres calls him the chicken whisperer because Mackay, from the time he was little, when the time he got his first chicken until he was probably about 17, Mackay had a chicken under his arm. He knew all of his
Oh my
chicken.
gosh, I love
But
it.
I will tell you, if you talk to my son Mackay today, you would never know that Mackay has fetal alcohol syndrome. Kids are
Wow.
resilient.
Incredible.
Okay.
Mm.
And if you invest in a young person, stop lying like generation. They used to say, invest in a young person, you invest in their future. BS. The elders lied to us. When you invest in a young person, you actually invest in my future, your future, Lauren, your future, Emily, because they are our leaders of tomorrow.
And don't sell anyone short. If they've got the right support and the right resources and the love that they deserve,
Exactly.
there's nothing they can't do.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
That
amazing.
is incredible. There's so many incredible stories tied into
Yeah.
your incredible family story. We could talk all day.
So does that mean book number 2 is in the works? What did the family decide?
The family decided that dad should definitely be talking about book number 2. So
All right.
Okay.
conversation's
Well, we're going
happening.
to stay
You never
tuned.
know. You never know.
Yeah, this has been lovely. So,
It's been
like
amazing.
Lauren said, we could talk forever, but we do have a couple of last questions for you.
Sure, let's do it.
Since so many in our community are hopeful prospective parents, what is one thing that you would say to someone who is considering adoption as a way to grow their family?
You know what? I think adopting, no matter what a young person's age is a gift. And, for Reese and I, we got to experience a baby. Tristan was 6 months old. Reese was unbelievable with the little baby diaper things. I sucked. Um, this is I waited for this age group, okay, by the way. So
Yeah.
do it, but this is the thing I want people to understand is don't judge how people grow their family. You got to grow your family how your heart feels. Our heart was foster care, and that's great. And by the way, there's close to 120,000 kids waiting in the system to be adopted. Parents' rights have been terminated. The average age is 7. Don't think that it's an
Wow.
expensive thing. It's free. Okay? But it's a journey and it's a lot of work, but it's so rewarding. So do your homework, ask the questions. And by the dumb question, that dumb question is that question you didn't ask. That is the only dumb
That's great.
question.
Mhm.
There is no such thing as a dumb question. It's only the question you didn't ask. So ask questions. That's how we get educated.
Right.
Love
Be
it.
curious. So, final question. How can someone show up for a friend or family member who is navigating this journey?
Wow, I love that because that is something we all should do is show up for each other. And if you know somebody that's, in your tribe, as I say, and they're considering going through that, why not educate yourself? Because by the way,
Imagine
but and
that.
so just think if this amazing person that's in your life decides to adopt, and they bring this young person into their life. You want to be in that person's life, so why shouldn't you educate yourself? Why shouldn't you understand what comes along with adoptions, the good and the bad, the trauma and the joy? So, your tribe, educate them too. You thinking about doing it? Don't do it alone. Don't be like Reese and I. Thank God I had Reese, you know, because now I look at us now and I look at the people that are around us. Whoo, Don't have to ever do anything alone. And by the way, you don't either. You don't either. Because there are people that they want to hear your story. Because when you tell your story, it impacts people. So if your story is adoption, tell it and stand on that mountain and get everybody with you. Because when you push the mountain will move. It won't move by yourself, but it'll move it with everybody else.
Wow, what a closing, Rob.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you wanted to share that we haven't asked about?
I hope people continue to follow the journey at Comfort Cases. We're a 96% volunteer ran organization. We don't have any large corporate sponsors writing us continuous checks. We have the largest sponsor in the world, and that's our human race. Our average donor is $8. And so what that tells you is that our population, we're amazing. We're amazing. We just have to be educated. That's all. Be educated. So visit us, comfortcases.org.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us today, Rob.
Have a great day, ladies.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week with more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at allpathsfb or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, to learn more about our work. And please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support. And today we want to recognize and thank bronze sponsor Femisys. Your partnership is vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone who is struggling to grow their family. And to the entire All Paths community, thank you for being here. It's an honor to walk with you on your journey.